very good to the world around us. But the reality is, Jesus says nobody's good but God. Nobody's good but God. So what he's talking about there is that people do not walk with a pure motivation for what they do. Somebody writes a great big check to a great organization that works with kids. Oh man, that guy, he did such a good thing. Yeah, well, maybe he was looking for a lot of recognition. Maybe he felt guilty about something that he did done in his life. He's like, if I write this check, I'll feel better with myself. You don't know what his motivations are, but we know that people are flawed with selfishness. So humanism is a lie. When people ask, why does God allow evil or bad things to happen to good people? It's because they are stuck with humanism. The answers to this question really should be this. God is holy. God is pure. God is just. God is all-powerful. God is all-seeing. God is all-knowing. God is the creator of the universe. Everything that has been made is actually owned by Him. He is the source. He is the one. There is no other. When we understand that, the question has to change. Not, why does God allow evil or bad things to happen to good people? Why does God put up with the garbage that we do? That's the right answer, because He loves us. But the question changes when our mindset and our worldview changes to be Christ-centered and biblical. Because a Christ-centered and biblical worldview says that God is supreme and that God is pure and just and holy, and we are not. We make a mess of life. We hurt one another. We sin and we cause problems with each other. We are people that are flawed, and we produce flawed people and flawed relationships, which is why we have people that run around and commit crimes and do horrible things. So it's not why does God allow evil to happen or bad things to happen to good people. It's why does God allow us to be so sinful? It's because He loves us. It's because He loves us. It's an act of mercy. You see, God really has three big things that He does with people. He has justice. Justice is the way that God acts, in which He delivers judgment. That's justice. Justice is very final. It's always correct because it comes from God. Okay? Justice, getting what you deserve. So we've already identified that people are sinful. Justice means God sends people to hell. That's justice. Okay? Hell is very real. God sends people there out of justice. Okay? Because God is right, we are not. Okay? We act selfishly and sinfully, we end up getting justice. Now, then there's mercy. Mercy is when God withholds His justice, His judgment. Right now, you are all here as a part of God's mercy. God has not called an end to this existence as we know it out of His justice. He has withheld it. His mercy is reigning right now. You are here out of God's mercy. And then there's this great thing. And it's God's grace. Grace. You see, grace isn't God just withholding His justice or His judgment. Grace is giving you something you don't deserve. Grace is what you get through Jesus Christ. It's getting something you don't even deserve. You cannot earn it. You cannot gain it. But by faith you receive it. So grace is the ability to live in such a way where the questions change. And now the question is not, why does God allow evil? But, God, how can I make a difference in these lives around me? God, how can I make a difference in this world? How can I be used by You? Those are the questions that somebody asks when they're operating with grace in their life. Because they understand that they have received a forgiveness for their sin, a relationship with God that they did not deserve. And out of that, they can live a new life with a new understanding. So the questions can change. Let's talk about some of these other questions though. You know, does your life suck sometimes? Sometimes life's garbage, right? People can get in a mode blaming God for their life not being the way they want it to be. Okay? They can get in a mode, maybe they've got significant health problems. And they're like, well, but I know God's the healer, so it's kind of His fault that I'm still sick. Right? And that's the way some people think. Or they're just suffering. Maybe it's not a specific illness, but they're just at a point of suffering. You know, and you think of maybe people in third world countries, lots of poverty and just horrible circumstances. Maybe they've been in abusive situations, all that kind of stuff. They're suffering. Well, why would God allow that to happen to me? The first thing is this. God, out of all of His goodness, okay, out of all of His goodness, allows this reality to go forward because God is patient. God is patient. See, let's just dissect it a little bit. Let's say suffering, for instance. Say you're an innocent that is suffering at the hands of somebody who's an abuser, or suffering at the hands of a government that just treats their people horribly, or suffering in poverty. But you see, those things are all the result of a broken, sinful world that's around us. God is not the one causing those things to happen to that person. It's other people. It's sinful people. Right? And so what happens is this. You have sinful people making sinful choices, hurting people. So what is going on is God, in His patience, allows this to go on. Not because He wants you to suffer, but because, A, maybe you will have a testimony through your suffering. Maybe through your suffering, you'll be able to talk to somebody else who's suffering and share about the grace that carried you through your suffering. That's one possibility. There's another possibility. Maybe God is being patient because there is somebody that's going to talk to those that are causing the suffering. And they need to admit their need for the grace of God and a change. We don't know all of the answers. Those for God to know. But we do know this, that God's character is always good. God's character is never to be called into question. When we call God's character into question, we're in trouble. We'll get back to this side in a minute with those sort of questions, okay? So, we have to have the right worldview, and then we have to move to the place where we understand that God's timing and patience is key to the work that He does. This one here. Any of you struggle with sin? Anybody? Okay, so the rest of you are liars. Okay, that's cool. That's great. That's great. Everybody struggles with sin. Everybody. Sorry to burst your bubble. You will never reach a place where sin is not a struggle. Brett, you struggle with sin? Thank you.
Well, yes. I'm just going to say, too, if you don't struggle with sin, you are sinning.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's actually really cool. It's like when you ask people,